Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us tonight as we hold our third and final Healthy Yards webinar for the year. We're thrilled so many of you could join us tonight, and what a great day to start thinking about gardening. Sorry. My name is Becca Robinson. I work at Reep Green Solutions. I'm a landscape designer. We are an environmental charity based in Kitchener, and we work with people all over the region of Waterloo and Guelph to access tools and resources necessary to live more sustainably. So tonight we'll be discussing how to beautify our boulevards and add value to the wildlife habitat in our neighborhoods. And as part of that, we'd like to acknowledge that we live in the Waterloo region. The Waterloo region and the Grand River watershed are located on the traditional territory of Indigenous peoples, including the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Neutral peoples. We recognize the enduring presence of the Indigenous peoples who we share this land with today and their contributions to our community. Fundamental to the talk tonight is the important role of watersheds in our lives and how we can be better stewards of our land to protect the functions that watersheds provide for a healthy life on Earth. And one way of doing that is beautifying our boulevards and creating wildlife habitat. So the webinar tonight is part of a series supported by the City of Kitchener through our Rain Smart Neighborhoods program. Through this program, we support property owners to slow rain down and soak it up on their yards, as well as do other landscaping improvements that will help support the health of the Grand River watershed. So in addition to webinars and workshops, we conduct landscape design consultations for anyone who owns a property in the target areas where we're working, where flood risk reduction and watershed health improvement is a key priority for the city. So if you live in the city of Kitchener, I encourage you to visit our website seen here and check the map to see if you live in one of these areas. And from there, you can learn how we can support you in stewarding your property for the betterment of our watershed. Other programs we offer that have a wider reach outside of the city of Kitchener in Cambridge, Guelph, and Waterloo include our backyard tree planting program, where an arborist can visit your property to help you determine what tree species and what location would be best for your particular conditions. And then we return later to plant the tree for you. And all of this is at a subsidized cost in partnerships with the municipalities I just mentioned. We're also currently having our Bloomin' Box sale. So this is, we create 3 native plant kits, one for sun, one for shade, and one for rain. And these are curated to include 4 or 5 different native plant species that bloom at different times of the year. And it's a nice, easy way to get native plants that work well together in an area of your garden that meet the conditions based on your light or moisture. And we also host a native plant or native shrub sale in the fall. So we don't have a date or location for that identified yet, but if you stay tuned for that by visiting our website, or you can sign up for our newsletter and we'll share those details as we develop them. So thanks again for joining us tonight. And now I will turn it over to our speaker for tonight, Adele Pierre. Adele is a landscape architect and arborist who's worked with Reep for several years in various roles, but tonight she's joining us to share lessons and inspiration from her work as an award-winning designer of beautiful, low-maintenance landscapes. Over to you, Adele.
Thank you. Let me just get myself booted up here.
Yep, and then just stop sharing. Sorry. So before you start, Adele, I'll just mention I'll be monitoring the Q&A throughout the talk, and we will stop for questions along the way somewhat, and then I'll help moderate the rest of the questions at the end of the talk.
Great. It's good to be with you again this evening. I don't know if any of you have been to any of my former webinars, but if you have, welcome back. The previous webinars I've done and seminars in this last year have been pretty broad in terms like how to have a sustainable garden, naturalized landscape design, bringing nature to your yards and making nature thrive through the plants that you have. And those are pretty broad topics. So I always feel like I'm just trying to cram in as much information as possible. I'm talking about your soils and the sunlight and permeable pavement and native versus cultivar plants and just all kinds of information. And I just feel like I'm in a rush and there's always about 99 slides to get through. Tonight is a little bit, well, quite a bit more targeted. And I have to say, I've really enjoyed putting this one together. I've never done a talk on this. I have designed many boulevards, but it's a very specific kind of design. And more people are doing it. And so we'll just spend the next hour looking at ways that you can make your boulevard contribute to the ecosystem around us, to support pollinators and other kinds of wildlife, and just create a healthier neighborhood. We will stop for questions quite frequently, so put them in the chat box and we'll stop and discuss them. And I've broken it up into 4 separate sections. First of all is the benefits, and that's pretty short because we all know you wouldn't be here unless you thought planting up your boulevard was beneficial. Second is the restrictions and challenges, and that's where I'm going to go. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do the other thing, don't do. And I'm sorry, but we have to get all of that stuff out of the way because really it is a specialized area and we can't just plant it with a stand of goldenrod that's going to be 4 feet tall, even though goldenrod supports 143 different butterflies and moth species. Then we're going to talk about plants that you might try in the garden. Some of them you'll be familiar with, but I always try to give you some new options where it comes to natives. Mostly native plants. I also have some regular garden variety plants that you'll know from years gone by that work in a space like this. And then we'll talk a little bit about making a plan. So let's get started. Why? Now let me see why my box is missing. Oh, I didn't have a box here. Why plant up? Well, because there is what a grassy boulevard looks like. And there's what it looks like when it's planted up. Now, this isn't technically a boulevard. This is part of somebody's yard, but it is city-owned property. It backs onto the sidewalk. And the reasons for planting up your boulevard are many. Number one, you're increasing biodiversity. You're providing habitat for pollinators and for birds. The birds eat seed heads on most of these plants. You're creating beauty for the neighborhood. And you're managing stormwater because the turf that is traditionally on the boulevards doesn't really absorb a lot of water. Most of that water just runs off. So the benefits are huge to planting up your boulevard. So the restrictions. Number one, this part of your property does not belong to you. And I cannot stress this enough. This is city-owned property. You need to check your bylaws. We'll just go over that. I'll show you where you can find them in just a moment. The safety is paramount. So it's not that the cities are being nasty when they say that you can't plant this and you can't plant that. Anything that's next to a roadway, health and safety is top. Everybody needs to be able to see clear sight lines, especially at corners and especially at driveway entrances. We keep the plantings below 2 feet in height, maximum 30 inches. If that seems cruel, just think about the little toddler that may be on your street. They're not very tall. And if they get on their little tricycle and drive off of a driveway, they're even lower down. Make sure you can always see, and you're rigorous about the plant heights. We are not going to mound up the soil in the middle because we're trying to absorb stormwater. So we're going to do a little bit of scoop in the middle rather than the water going off. The water must stay in the boulevard. It is actually against bylaws to create runoff that goes into the street or onto the sidewalk, and keep the plantings away from the bases of trees. Trees are special. It's best if you keep plantings about 1 meter away. Now, I'm just going to show you some of these bylaws. I don't think I booted up. Let me just go here. So this is from the city of Kitchener. And if you think that cities don't want you to do this, you are wrong. Look at this boulevard beautification, everything you need to know about it. You don't even need me here tonight. The benefits, how much will it cost? How long will it take? What approvals do I need? What happens if construction or maintenance is needed? And take a look at this. There are funding opportunities if you are in the city of Kitchener. They will give you money if you get friends and neighbors together and do a whole bunch of them in a strip. So they're really keen on having you do this. If you're in Guelph, Boulevard Gardens, everything you need to know, planting on city property. They will even give you some plans. Thank you, Karen, at the city of Guelph with a healthy neighborhoods. They will show you what to do. If you are in Kitchener, you can get a consultation from Becca. If you are in Guelph, you just go to the website and get a consultation with their healthy yards, and they'll come out and help you with it. If you're in Oakville, same deal. Every city has this now. Boulevard gardening, lawns and gardens, planting advice, planting a pollinator garden, all the things that you need to know about planting a boulevard in the city, they are there to help you. So maybe some cities are still restricted, but most of them are not Grinches anymore. They're encouraging you to plant this stuff. They think it's important. All they ask is that you stay in their rules. Now, this thing that I just mentioned about this property, this strip of land not belonging to you, there's also a fair bit of setback on your property that does not belong to you. And if you are curious about finding where that is, you can find, let me just get my tabs up here. I have to move something out of the way. You can't see this, but I can. I had it elsewhere and I lost it. Give me a moment and I will click on it. If you go to the Grand River Conservation Authority, you can find something called Map Your Property, and maps are by municipality. So I'd be looking at Brant County, Hamilton, Guelph, Haldimand, anywhere you click on that. It will take just a second to boot up, and you'll be able to find your property anywhere on the map. I'm not going to take too much time with this one. I'm going to go to the Kitchener one. Kitchener Interactive Map. Every municipality, by the way, sorry, I keep having stuff in my face and I'm just trying to get it out of the way. There we go, accept. Every municipality has these interactive maps. They're put out by Esri. You can zoom in. Sorry, this is just a little slow. I'm not sure why, but it is. I know. I'm just not getting the windows that I need because all the stuff here, there we go, is all the Zoom stuff is in my way. Okay, so there you can see a property in the city of Kitchener, and it will show you the yellow belongs to you. There's a house on there. The gray doesn't belong to you. You go to your base maps and you get your aerial imagery, and all of a sudden you can see where the white line is. And you can actually take a measurement, and we'll be doing a little bit more of this later, to see how much setback is back from the sidewalk that you actually don't own, and this is owned by the city. Very important, because if the city has to do any maintenance, they have a right to deal with any of that property that does not technically belong to you. The second, those are the restrictions by the city. Their challenges are quite large. So this is where I'm sorry to be very negative, but the plants must be tolerant of foot traffic, compaction from foot traffic. They have to be tolerant of road salt. They have to be able to have snow piled on top of them. They have to be able to take dog pee. They have to be able to compete with tree roots. They have to be able to survive in dry conditions. They have to be able to put up with vehicular exhaust and heavy metals in there. So I do not encourage you to put a vegetable garden next to it. and all kinds of disruptions. And this is why the city owns that property. They have to be able to rip it up in case they need to change a sewer main, in case there's a gas line that needs to be repaired, in case they need to put in new concrete sidewalks. If they put in new concrete sidewalks, all of a sudden you've got the runoff from all of that concrete and the pH of your soil goes up. And another one that we don't think about enough, and that is my own personal peeve: who parks in these spots, and do they have kids? So when you're planting your garden there, are you thinking about that poor person who's parking in front of your house, and then they go around to the back seat and they have to struggle a kid out of the car seat? Are they going to be stepping on your tulips when they're doing that? Or is there going to be a place for them to stand? So these are all of the challenges of this kind of garden. Any questions so far on that? I know we've just sort of started, but those are a lot of issues.
One question has come up about existing boulevards that are already mounded due to all kinds of reasons. This person was particularly asking about road sand and various things that have been pushed on the boulevard, so it's already mounded. And any tips you have for regrading in advance?
Yes, yes, and we will talk about that.
Okay.
So in fact, this is where we're going to talk about it. So when we get to the plants, the number one thing, of course, is to know your soil, whether it's sand, silt, clay. And I put a special category in here, and I call it crud, because if you take a look at that picture, this is a boulevard that I am currently designing for, and that is exactly what it is. And it is not mounded up, but it's full of all kinds of that stuff. You need to know how much sunlight you've got. Full sun is 6 hours, partial sun is 3 to 6 hours, full shade's no direct sunlight. Not that many boulevards are in full shade. Most of them are in full sun. You need to prep your site. So this is where we're just going to spend a little bit of boring time talking about it. First of all, you do need to remove the turf, and you do need to remove the weeds. And you may very well have to take soil out. So I know that's a real pain. If there's somewhere where you can put the fill, that's great. There's probably gravel, there's probably sand, it's probably all built up. But unless you get rid of some of that stuff and amend the soil a little bit, you're not going to have a great level of success. I'm not even that concerned about sand and gravel, because in Kitchener, Cambridge, Guelph, especially in Cambridge, some of those soils are almost 100% gravel. They're very, very granular, and there are plants that will grow in that kind of soil. I'm more concerned with that mounding. If they mound up in the middle, there is no way you are going to be able to keep water in that soil. You will have to scoop in a little bit. It doesn't have to be a lot. Water only needs basically a 1% grade. That's almost nothing, about 1/8 of an inch a foot, just so it goes towards the middle. So the site prep is number one, the most important. So if you've got a lot of stuff in there, you may have to excavate. If it's relatively flat, you need to remove the turf and you need to remove the weeds. Now, there are a number of ways of doing this. If you want to do it right away, you dig the stuff out. And if you're digging out turf, put it in your compost pile. It makes fantastic compost. If you're dealing with weeds, and by that I don't mean native plants, but really weeds, non-natives like dandelions and chickweed and all of that stuff, you might consider solarizing. So you could put black plastic over it. It kills almost everything in the soil, but soil life will come back shortly after, and that will kill those weeds. If you've got a lot of time, you can do the lasagna layering. So you're going to have to put some cardboard on top and then mulch on top of that and wait for full season or over the winter at least. And then you've got nice soil underneath. But I'm sorry to say that just as when you are designing a rain garden, the same rules apply. You need a little bit of a grade. One of the purposes of this garden is to prevent the storm water from going over the curb and into the storm sewers, very much like a rain garden. So if you've been in one of the rain garden seminars, you know you have to scoop it out so that you've got a depression in the soil and you fill it in with other good soil. I'm not telling you to do this here, but even at the top, it needs to be scooped out so that you're going to hang on to the water and it's not going to go anywhere. When you're doing this as well, you need to allow enough room for compost and mulch. So I have designed some fairly large boulevard gardens in downtown Hamilton, right in the north end, Barton Street, terrible soil, absolutely crappy soil. And we have literally had to excavate a foot of soil to be able to get anything in there. I'm not suggesting you excavate a foot, but when you are excavating, bear in mind that after you do that, you still need room for a little bit of compost. You don't need really rich soil for using native plants, but you need about 2 inches of compost worked into the soil. And then you will need bark mulch on top of it. And the bark mulch is only for the beginning. We want to plant these beds densely enough that the plants eventually cover the soil and we don't need any more mulch. Mulch is a bit of a bad rap because we see these gardens that are acres of mulch and just a couple of evergreens or whatever. The mulch has a twofold purpose. It keeps the weeds down because the light can't get to them to germinate. It keeps the water in the soil and preventing evapotranspiration. And it keeps the soil temperature down. It's going to be 28 degrees here in Brant County in 2 days' time. That's incredibly hot. Think about the summer last year and how hot it got. Whatever the air temperature is, add another 10 degrees on. And that's what the raw soil temperature is, the temperature at the surface. So we have to make the conditions good for the plants, cool, free of weed competition, and the ability to retain water before we even think about planting. Any other questions before we go on?
Yes, one person here has already working on a boulevard garden. It's built up a bit, and with time adding mulch and etc., they expect it to be built up even more. What do you suggest to prevent that like increasing buildup as we add mulch?
You have to start before you've added mulch. You have to, so this is a really hard thing to do, but I know when I do a boulevard garden and the topsoil comes in, they always put it to the level of the sidewalk. And I always say, no, get it away from the level of the sidewalk. It needs to be below that. Now, if you've already done it, it depends on the width of your boulevard. It depends on the width of your bed, how wide it is this way, okay, this way. So what you can do if you've already built it up and you're concerned about it is make a little mini swale right at the edge here, okay? So the soil is going to, the mulch is actually going to meet the edge of the sidewalk, and then it's going to go down about 2 inches, and then it will come up to whatever your grade currently is. And you're going to want to do the same thing on the other side where the sidewalk is. So you've just got a little swale on either side of the bed. Does that help? That help your question?
I think so. Another person's wondering similarly, what about running into tree roots when you're doing this excavation?
You have to avoid them. You can't dig around them. And I'll talk about root trees in just a moment. That is the biggest challenge. And so if you look at the city bylaws about boulevards, some of them will say, do not plant or do not dig within a meter of the base of the tree trunk. So really, we need to be very careful. So when you're looking at, try not to dig. When you're looking at plant material, good luck, anything growing right under those roots. You might be able to get a few things to grow, but your strategy might be to start not with a good sized plant, but with a plug. You can get a plug at native plant nurseries for about $1.29, so you're not spending a lot of money. And put those in because they don't require a lot of soil. You can't dig deep because you'll disturb the trees. Now, a really well-established oak, you'd have a hard time with your boulevard planting destroying it, but it's just always good practice not to fight with the tree roots. The tree is going to win. Anything else?
Last question so far, costs of excavation. Generally, that might be a hard one to answer, but someone's interested in that cost and method for excavating out the boulevard.
Okay, it shouldn't be, you could get a landscaper to come and do it. It doesn't cost a lot of money. They would do it by hand and they would take away any excess. If you're doing it, again, it shouldn't be a massive amount of soil. Can you put it somewhere else in your garden? Possibility. But if it's hugely mounted up, you might consider just doing a little bit at a time, a section at a time. You could just put plants in, but it's not going to be as successful as if you have the excavation. And when I'm saying excavation, I'm saying like literally go down 2 inches below the level of the curb or the level of the sidewalk. It's not a huge amount. Anything else?
That's it for now.
Okay, so anyone who's been to my seminars or webinars, I always say, if you only do one thing, plant a native tree. If you only do one thing, plant a tree, the eco benefits are astonishingly fine. This is the first time you've heard me say, do not plant a tree. So this picture was taken in Vancouver. We were out there in February walking along, and it's hard to tell from this, but that sidewalk is lifted a full 6 inches off of the ground, and the roots of the tree go right across here. Now, there are 2 reasons that you shouldn't plant a tree in the boulevard. Number 1, you're not allowed to. Remember, it's not your property, it's owned by the city. If you plant a tree there, they can come and take it out, and they might take it out because they say this is going to destroy our infrastructure. And they're probably right. I was recently at a seminar run by the International Society of Arboriculture, and the people who were talking, the 2 men who were giving the webinar, were discussing the amount of money that it costs to repair stuff like this. They are looking at ways of preventing tree roots from destroying sidewalks. They've looked at everything, root barriers, everything. They haven't come up with a good solution yet. But what they did say is that in most cities, almost 20% of the urban forestry budget goes to fixing stuff like this rather than into planting new trees. And you may think that it's just a really innocent looking, cute little tree. This is in Guelph. I know this property intimately. This picture was taken in the upper left in 2009, and you can't even see it there. That's a tiny little oak tree. 14 years later, there it is. Look at where the roots are going. Look at how close it is to the sidewalk. And for those of you who are talking about dealing with tree roots, this boulevard was full of daylilies. Not so much anymore. So the trees will get in the way. I love trees. Please plant a tree. Sign up for the tree planting program. Plant a native tree. There's nothing better you can do for the environment, but put it farther back on the property. Keep it away from driveways. Keep it away from sidewalks. Keep it away from roads. Now, we're going to look at a number of plants that I think are quite spectacular for boulevards. Now, I've only recommended one shrub because this is a cultivar of a native. It's Aronia chokeberry. It's quite lovely. It grows 2 feet tall and 2 feet wide. I know of no pure native shrub that is that small. The next smallest might be New Jersey tea, and that's going to get to 4 feet tall and wide. There is a dogwood that grows only 2 feet tall and wide, Kelsey dogwood, but those Corniceracea, the cardinal dogwoods, do not do well with road salt. They just poop out and die. So this is a lovely little shrub if you want some woody plant material there. But I would also caution again, remember that this part of the road, if there are any repairs to be done on any kind of infrastructure, so that means Bell, that means hydro, that means the sewers, that means your internet, any kind of infrastructure, it's going to be ripped up. If your boulevard is going to be ripped up, you can take all of your perennials and plant them in somewhere else on the property, and they'll be just fine when you plant them back. In fact, they might be happier because you'll take time and divide them. But woody plant material, not so easy to do. So that is a lovely one. I think I talk about this shrub on just about every webinar that I do. I get a lot of questions about shady sites. People are okay with sunny sites. They're not so good with shady sites. So there are a couple of native plants that are kind of thugs. They grow in the shade, but they'll take over your life. So they're a good plant for a difficult shady site. So something like this might work when you're dealing with tree roots and you're also on a shady site where not much else will grow. You plant the woodland strawberry, you plant the Canada anemone, they will cover the ground. You never have to think about them again. This is for the lazy gardener. Just make sure they don't get into your neighbor's planting strip, but they'll do beautifully. You'll get flowers on the woodland strawberry, and then you'll get fruit. The neighborhood kids will absolutely love you. Here's a couple more straight natives that will work well in a shady site. The woodland phlox divaricata. There's also an aster divaricata that would work well. And Carex pennsylvanica, which is oak sedge. You may think that just looks like grass, but it does get this flower here. And you know, the pollinators do find their way to it. So you could plant this. It's very, very tough. I don't often recommend Carex because they usually require a moist soil, but that'll do pretty well there. In fact, in general, plants that do well in shade are woodland plants. They're used to all of that nice compost that comes down from the trees when the leaves crumble. They've got all that nice duff, all that nice compost. They've got moist soil, all the stuff that we don't have on boulevard gardens. So I'm really loath to suggest too many of these woodland plants because they just won't do well. These ones will be fine. This is a winner. Zigzag goldenrod, Solidago flexicalis. I think that's how you pronounce it. It won't grow big and tall. It won't overtake your life the way goldenrod normally will. And no, goldenrod does not cause hay fever. That's ragweed. It's got a companion plant here, which is the wild ginger. And I wish I could tell you to plant wild ginger because it's fantastic ground cover, but it won't tolerate road salt, so it's just going to poop out and die on you. A couple that do well in partial shade, and you never know, sometimes they'll work in a shady site. Penstemon hirsutus, the hairy beard tongue, and Aquilegia canadensis, eastern columbine. Eastern columbine is, and you'll hear me say this about a number of plants, it's a short-lived perennial, so it'll be there and then it might disappear and then it might send up some babies somewhere, or you may just have to replant every once in a while. But beautiful, beautiful plants, and the pollinators will be thankful for them. Any questions so far? These are all the ones. I think these are all, oh, one more. There's the whitewood aster. Also, if you had it in your normal garden, it might take over the world. Same with the heath aster, Aster ericoides, that does well in sun. But you know, if you've got a tough spot and you just need a thug that's going to grow, I'd say plant 2 or 3 of these varieties and let them duke it out. See what works, because all we're after is creating some habitat, and holding some water in the soil and increasing biodiversity. Any questions about a shady site in particular, or about competing with trees?
Not so far. Nope, that we haven't already asked.
Okay. Now, one of the reasons I love doing these webinars is because I find that I push myself to find new plants. I and other designers and probably other gardeners can be lazy. I love Echinacea purpurea, the coneflower that everybody knows. It's beautiful, but it can grow pretty darn tall. It can grow 3 feet tall, maybe even taller. So I found this one. I've never used this angustifolia, Echinacea angustifolia. Angustifolia just means it's got a narrow leaf. So it's not quite as showy. My mom used to use that term. Petunias, she loved petunias because they were showy. This is not quite as showy as some of the other echinaceas, but it serves a vital function. Look at the soil it's growing in. In a gravelly soil, it will take any kind of soil, and it tolerates drought. It tolerates high alkalinity, which is what you often get at a roadside. It'll be in shade, sun, part shade. Now, I read that it's a host plant or provides food for 26 species of native bees, plus many other pollinators. So that's pretty outstanding. So I have to say, I'm going to try this one. It only grows 2 feet tall. So what's not to love? It will do beautifully in your boulevard garden. Now, the only other echinacea that meets those height requirements is a cultivar, and it's called Prairie Splendor. I have to say, I've had mixed success with this one, but you might have better luck. It's very beautiful. It's very compact. It is a cultivar, but it's not very far away from the species. So you'd have a hard time telling this apart from the straight purple coneflower that everybody plants. It's just shorter. And so I have found, I think I have 6 kinds of echinacea planted on my property, and the pollinators all seem to like them, as long as you don't go with any of those that have crazy hair, you know, the double ones and they stick up, and the orange ones and the yellow ones. Try to stick with ones that are close to the species. Like if I can't tell it's an echinacea, probably the monarch butterfly can't. I don't know. But if you are going to plant this cultivar, I would recommend that you also plant this beautiful plant that's right next to it. And this is the lance leaf tickseed, Coreopsis lanceolata. It's fantastic. Now, this is so cheerful, and it blooms all the time. And if you don't like yellow flowers, I'm sorry for you. You're missing out on life. And I say that because a lot of people say, I don't like yellow flowers. We're all craving forsythia. We're all craving daffodils right now. They attract so many pollinators. They're so beautiful and sunny and cheery. And there's so many great yellow plants. So embrace the sunshine and plant this one. You will not regret it. This one, I planted little tiny plugs last year, about yay high. They bloomed all the way from June right to the end of the summer. I didn't even deadhead. Astonishing. I live on the Haldeman Clay Plain. It's hard to grow anything here. This thing grows. Plant it. Have I said that enough? Plant this plant. Now, it may disappear and then appear in another part of the garden because this is a short-lived perennial. So you may see it coming up in a place that you don't want. So if you don't want it there, dig it up and relocate it, or else get a couple of plugs every year and put a few more in. Fantastic plant. The bees go insane over it. Remember what I just said about yellow? Embrace yellow. This is our native Rudbeckia or black-eyed Susan, Rudbeckia hirta. There are a number of good varieties that are pretty sound. This is the straight species. There's also something called green eyes. There's a number of varieties. They're quite beautiful. They are also extremely short-lived. So it's best to treat these almost as an annual or at most a biannual. If you want a Rudbeckia that's going to last all summer, go with the good old Rudbeckia fulgida Goldstern. It's still a good plant to use. I'm not a purist when it comes to native plants. Use what's going to work in the space, but if at all possible, use a native. If you can't use a native in that space, put a native plant somewhere else. We just need places for our wildlife to be able to feed, to lay their eggs, to raise their young. And that's usually on the native plants. Rebecca fulgida goldsturm, fantastic plant. Couple of comments here. So this is smooth aster. I've used this a fair bit in boulevard plantings as well. If you look at the height, the ultimate height, it will say 2 to 3 feet. It's 3 feet, except it keels over. It doesn't stick upright, and don't try to make it stick upright. So it's totally doable within a boulevard. The asters in general are a great perennial to use. They're one of our keystone species. They support many varieties of wildlife, but many of them grow too tall. So the New England aster is going to be too tall for your boulevard. You can use a cultivar called Purple Dome, but you can also keep your asters and other fall blooming perennials or late summer blooming perennials a little lower. Your asters, your sedums, your coneflowers, all kinds of stuff. You just have to remember to cut them back by about 1/3 before Canada Day, okay? So if you do that, they'll be more compact, they'll be bushier, they'll have more flowers. And if you think you forget, just remember this. Oh, Canada, our home and native. So when you're singing Oh, Canada on Canada Day and you get to native, you think, okay, get out in the garden, chop them back. And your plants will thank you. I never remember, but I'm hoping you will. This other one, Liatris spicata, I adore it. I adore it. This picture was taken in a gritty industrial area in Hamilton, like about as unfriendly as you can possibly get for plants and pollinators. We dug out 2 feet of crud, urban fill. We took asphalt off, we put soil in, they mounted up too high, I made them scoop a little bit out. We put native plants in. This was within 3 months of planting, and the bees were going insane. Now, normally this plant is quite well behaved and it'll grow 1 to 2 feet, but I have had it grow in another location on another busy street on like 4 lanes of traffic and a bus route. This crazy plant grew 4 to 5 feet tall. It was insane. And so I've been looking for other Liatris, which are also native varieties. There's this one, the rough blazing star, and I think that's better. And also the dwarf blazing star, Liatris cylindrica. Maybe not quite as much pizzazz as the other one, but they are quite beautiful. And they will provide habitat. Monarda punctata. So some of our monardas get too big, but this one, the spotted bee balm, is a very nice civilized size. It only grows 2 feet high. And then there's a whole bunch of these. You know that tune? I think it's Sesame Street. One of these things is not like the others. Well, the one that's not like the others is Geum trifolium. That's old man's whiskers. It's native. The rest of them are not native, but they do a good job and they're tough as nails. So anything in the salvia family is going to work. Caradonna sage, new dimension rose sage, little spire Russian sage, that's Perovskia. You'd notice Perovskia. Lavender is going to work there. Catmint's outstanding. There's all kinds of dwarf varieties, Persian blue, cat's meow, all kinds of them. They will work beautifully. Many of the milkweeds are too tall, but this one's not. Asclepias tuberosa, butterfly milkweed. I don't know about you, but I've not had success planting milkweed. I find it grows wherever it feels like. A couple of grasses. Almost all of our native grasses are too tall. Even little blue stem, it'll grow to 3 feet tall. I just don't want to tell you to plant something that's 3 feet tall, and then the bylaw officer comes around and says, I'm sorry, you have to take that out. Prairie drop seed, it grows to a certain height and then it keels over. It's beautiful, especially interplanted with echinacea. Just a gorgeous plant. The one on the left, piglet fountain grass, it's not native, but it's a really good plant and very tough, and I've used it to border all kinds of planting beds. And if you just need something that's really low and that's steppable, there are hundreds, literally hundreds varieties of creeping thymes and sedums. You can mix and match and create an entire tapestry of all different colors of these. And the reason that boulevards have grass on them is because they're easy to step on. Very few plants are steppable. I would say the thymes more so than the sedums, but these are really good plants to use, especially in between stepping stones. Any questions here before we sort of go to the design section?
Yes. Will the Rudbeckia, the cultivars of the Rudbeckia hybridize with the Rudbeckia hirta?
No.
Great. No. Okay. And last question. Some plants in boulevards get to look messy. What do you do then, or maybe how do you prevent that?
What do you mean by messy? Too big?
I'll have to interpret this person. I guess I would maybe I was picturing more like mixing of like a haphazard mixing.
Oh, haphazard. Okay, so we're just going to talk about that.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So I'm just going to turn my face off because I'm looking, if you can still see me, I'm looking at a big screen. So I apologize if I'm not looking at you. So I'll just address that question before we start on this. Native planting does not mean messy planting. Everything has to be done with intent. So the goal of your boulevard plantings is, besides all of those eco benefits we talked about, is to spread the good news about increasing biodiversity, increasing beauty, getting rid of lawn. If you put in 50 different plants of 50 different varieties without any thought to the height or the color or the shape or the size, it will look awful. So, right, your job is to make your planting look so good that your neighbors are going to say, I want that. How do I do that? What you don't want your neighbors to say is, that's appalling. I'm calling the bylaw officers on you. Okay, so we have to really think carefully about how we are approaching these gardens. This is just a random intersection that I just picked out really quite randomly in Kitchener. This was taken out of the GIS, so you can see there's the property line, and this person has, I'd say, yeah, they've got 8 feet that the city owns between their property line and the sidewalk, which is a fair bit. And if you look around, you can see that some people have big boulevards, some people have small boulevards. There are these tiny little spaces here on the corners. Now, what I did here is I decided I'd just design 2 small boulevards. And I put some cars there as context. So here is a Ford 150. You can see how big a space it is. And this is a tiny little, I think it's a Kia. So right here you can see, I wish I hadn't put those plants that close next to there, but I think you can still see that this is part of a longer strip, but this belongs to this property owner. So the first thing I would say you need to decide is, where are those cars going to be? Okay, when they park, you need to think about that. So for instance, if you've got small cars here, you know, there might be 2 or there might even be 3 cars along here, and you have to decide where people are going to be getting out of their cars, because that's where you want to be able to put some stepping stones. I did just put something up there. Give me one moment. Oh, that's fine. There we go. So I downloaded a bunch of these different, bear with me. there we go. A bunch of different plants to look at. So I did Agastache, Aquilegia, Asclepias. These are all Latin names, but you know, you guys know plants, you're pretty good with them. And I put them in an arrangement on these sites. Now you can do this yourself. You can get grid paper. This is an inch, a quarter of an inch equals a foot. And you can just get graph paper. You find the plants. Something like this is a Salvia nemorosa cardona. And I know that that plant has a spread of 1'6" and a height of 1'6". And so that circle is going to be equivalent of 18 inches. I put a couple of stepping stones here so that people could get out of the car. I put some thyme and some sedum in here so that it wouldn't get in the way. It would cover the ground, but they could step on it. And then I started to jam it with all kinds of plants. I have some prairie drop seed here. I have some coreopsis. I have some salvia. I have some monarda. I have some rudbeckia. And when we turn around and look at it, now bear in mind that these are like cartoon cutouts, so they don't fill the space as much as they normally would, as they would in real life. But you can see that you can get a very, very colorful boulevard planting with those. So I chose with this one to be extremely colorful. This is all sun. And you can get out of your car and you can walk across, and it looks, I think, pretty darn good. If you like a lot of color, there's a lot of color there. I also did one with shade. Much more subdued. So we've got some zigzag goldenrod. This plant is false Solomon seal. There's a penstemon, all kinds of woodland strawberry. And then I did the same on the other side. So you could do very restrained. You could do almost all. That's why it doesn't look so full. Let's go back to top plan. Sorry, too many controls here. But you can see when I've graphed them out, it's quite full. So you can either do a more restrained palette, or you can do a wild and crazy palette. I tend to like those really colorful palettes. So that's the way you would do it. You would pick your plants, pick a plant palette, say I'm going to use this, and this. And so this is pretty colorful, but there still aren't that many different varieties of plants, okay? So, and they're not all going to flower at the same time. So to that comment about it looking messy, make sure you always do a number of one plant in one place, a quantity like that, a cluster of plants. It makes such a difference because usually these boulevards are drive-by. People are driving by quickly. And something like these two Rudbeckia hirta together are going to read as one plant. Something like these coreopsis together are going to read as one plant. So you want to make sure that things are grouped well together. We're going to go to another one here. This is my, this is a much bigger bed. This one was only 3.5 feet wide. And this one is 1, 2, 3, 4. I think it's 5.5 feet wide. I'm just going to get rid of the grid. This one I wanted to make a bit more formal because I like to have order. So if you have an edge to your garden, you can put almost as much mess in the middle as you want, and it's not going to make much difference. So in this case, I put these little, do you remember I talked about the aronia, the small choke cherry, as a layer next to the sidewalk? I put a whole series of grasses at the front. I put some salvia along the edge, and then I filled the middle. So now I'll get rid of my truck. I'm pretending I don't need a vehicle here. That was just for context. Now you can see that this is a much more organized bed. In fact, it's almost formal. So you could do those shrubs all along one edge. Or you could do as I did. I did shrubs along either end, and then I put catmint in the middle. I've got asters behind, agastache, which is anise hyssop. I've got the echinacea angustifolia. I have prairie dropseed. I have some Aquilegia canadensis, the columbine. I have some milkweed. And over here, if you're driving by, it's going to look extremely orderly and extremely tidy because there's an edge to it. If this were just all chaos and all different plants here and there, it would be a mess. And also bear in mind that it is helpful if you deadhead. Okay, we're going to stop for some more questions again.
Okay. Not to give up on trees, this person says, further back houseward side of the sidewalk, can you recommend tree species that would not be viewed as enemies by the hydro authorities? So opposite side of the sidewalk.
Outside of the sidewalk. No trees should be within 7 feet of the sidewalk. Now, the city does plant them because they have a priority, but that's their business. But if you're planting, try to keep trees 7 feet away from any paved surface. If you're going to plant a tree under hydro lines, serviceberry, redbud, Austria virginiana, or that's also called, come on, ironwood, except a number of trees are called ironwood, pagoda dogwood. Those are all good trees. You can also find a list of trees that are suitable under the hydro lines if you Google it. Almost every hydro company, including Ontario Hydro, has a list of trees that they will accept underneath the hydro lines. Because if that tree, like the one that I showed you right near the beginning in Vancouver, it was also under hydro lines. That poor thing is being assaulted from above and below because hydro has to cut them back. Otherwise, every time there's an ice storm, people are going to lose power.
And the last question, what program are you using?
I'm using Vectorworks. It's a very expensive program. You don't want to use it. But I'm glad you asked that question because I wanted to just mention that. There are a number of programs you can use. Of course, you can use graph paper, but you can use SketchUp. Does anybody know SketchUp? Any hands up? Does anybody know SketchUp? There you go. There's a free version and there's a paid version. You can get a free version. My granddaughter is building a house on SketchUp. It's to scale. A lot of these plants, I only had so many plants that I could do in 3D because I had to make most of them. And that's very time consuming. Some come with the program, but it's very time consuming. Some of the plants I stole from SketchUp. Okay, so there are a number of plants that you can download to see how they will look. So SketchUp, you can do it in 2D and you can do it in 3D. It's brilliant. Another one that's extremely good is Morpholio Trace. Morpholio, Morpholio, Trace, and even the pro version is only $21 a year. Architects use this one. Same deal. You can do it. It doesn't have 3D, but it has scaled graph paper. You can change the scale and you can do different layers. So if you want to do your shrubs on a different layer than your perennials, if you want to do your spring blooming plants, as opposed to the summer blooming plants, as opposed to the fall blooming plants on different layers, it works beautifully. So those are a couple of programs that will work extremely well for you. There are so many drawing programs out there right now. All you need is something that will work to scale. Anything else?
Yes. Let's see. This person's boulevard is fairly small and they do park on the road. Is it okay to put stones along the whole front area along the street?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely, 100%. And the only thing that the city worries about is that anything's a tripping hazard. So they don't want sharp stones. I think they will often have a regulation on the type of stone, the size of the stone, but absolutely. But if you're doing all stone along there, you might consider just tucking in a couple of little thyme plants. They will grow. So anything that's a Mediterranean plant like lavender, thyme will grow in gravel. In fact, Beth Chatto, who is an English garden designer, wrote an entire book called The Gravel Garden, and she just planted it in a gravel pit. So if you don't plant something like thyme in your gravel or in your stones, there's a good chance you're going to be fighting weeds, unwanted. I'm not talking wildflowers that we call weeds, but unwanted weeds. It's a great seed bed for seedlings. Okay, so that's one strategy, but absolutely you can use stone. And if you do have a big tree and there are big tree roots, that may be just about your only resort. But I would encourage you to try to tuck just a few little plants in there. Anything else?
That's it for now.
Great. I think I finished on
Oh,
time.
great.
Astonishing.
Yeah, you did. It is. Wonderful. So thanks everybody so much for coming. Thank you, Adele. It was a beautiful and inspiring talk. And seeing no other questions pop in, I'll say good night to everyone. Have a great spring and happy gardening.
Don't garden too soon. Give it another week or two.
I know,
Okay.
it's so hard. All right, good night,
Okay,
everybody.
bye.
Bye.
Bye.